Hi, and welcome to Gay Out the City. I'm your host, Prince Electro Diamond, and today I honestly just kind of want to discuss what I'm moving towards with this podcast. And what I'm trying to do now is move more towards an interview based podcast instead of just doing just me talking about a topic because I realize that, at least for the present time, I pretty much said all I need to say in terms of doing a topic every week. I know it just seems like I just came back in the new year after taking a few months off. And all of a sudden, it's like I'm announcing now that I'm changing the podcast. And what that means is it might not, there might not be one every week. I'm going to try my best to do one, but it's very easy to ask somebody for an interview. It's very, very difficult for them to follow through on actually doing the interview. Because, for example, I was supposed to have an interview this week. I reached out to the person, or I thought I was supposed to have an interview this week. I reached out to the person multiple times and they never got back to me. So I had done all the research and they didn't end up following through. So, at least for the next 2 weeks, I'm pretty sure I have 2 interviews lined up for the next 2 weeks. Fingers crossed. I know I have one lined up on the 29th, but next week I'm not 100% sure about. On the 29th, I will promote right now. I have a downtown, or I wouldn't even say a downtown, a New York City performer, musician by the name of Benji Bradshaw. And next week, I'm supposed to have an interview with someone I follow on Twitter who's an OnlyFans creator named SETI. That one I'm not 100% sure about yet. I'll be able to know Wednesday or Thursday if I know I'm going to be able to do the podcast either on Sunday as I usually do it, or if I have to do it maybe the Saturday before. And this realization came to me after I got done doing the podcast last week on interracial relationships and sex. It made me realize that I've pretty much said all I need to say. Like, I can keep going over the topics because for those of you who have been a fan of this podcast since season 1, will remember that was very much my journey out of Orlando and into the area I'm living in now in South Florida. And for the beginning half of season 2, which I'm currently in, was very much about my opinions on things. And well, season 1's towards the end started being about my opinions on things as well. But it's definitely during season 2 where I started like sprouting new ideas. And I realized that I want to interview people. Like, I remember during season 1 doing an interview with my best friend Sean, and I loved it. Because it's a lot easier to like vibe off of people and sort of be free to like bounce ideas off of them. Because I will say this, me sitting in front of a microphone doing this myself, I can do it, but it's not really easy because there's no one to be like, oh, well, I think this way about this. Well, I think this way about that. I think this way about this. it's very easy when you have someone to like volley off of to do a podcast. That's why I think most people do podcasts with somebody. Versus me, I did the challenge, which was to do it by myself. And honestly, that was because of the technology that I was using. Like season 1 wasn't streamed on Twitch at all. That sort of came to me as I was starting season 2. And with especially the pandemic, it's so much easier for me to just do it on Twitch, which is actually essentially how I'm going to do the podcast now. Is I'm not going to record the audio like I am doing now. What I'm planning on doing is basically ripping the Twitch stream and putting that on YouTube as I have been with this and the opinionated bitch, and essentially taking audio from that and putting that up as the audio version of the podcast. Because with this all being about, with me doing it as an interview on Twitch, I'm not going to be able to like sit there and have the person I'm interviewing with have the same technology that I have. So on Twitch, I can just take the audio that I have or take the audio from the video that I have and just run with it, which will actually make the podcast a lot easier on me. But again, in some ways, as I said, it's difficult. It's very, as I said, it's very easy to ask people, hey, do you want to come on Gay Out the City, my podcast? It's very easy to do that. It's very hard to get people to like either answer me back or follow through. But I'm trying. I'm trying because I want to do. I don't want to do a mundane, boring podcast. And at some point, I love this. I love doing the opinionated bitch. They're some of my favorite things to do. But it's very sort of difficult to stream and talk for an hour into open space. I would say this. I love the concept of radio. Radio is very good. I understand why most DJs are in Howard Stern. It's not an easy thing to do. Not everyone can sit behind a microphone and just talk for 4 hours. 4 hours by yourself, first of all. I would say this. I know some people on Twitch stream for 4 hours when they're playing video games, but they're actually doing something. To just sit there and talk for 4 hours behind a microphone, hell, for 3 hours, for 2 hours, I may even say an hour. To sit behind a microphone for like an hour, hour and a half, just by yourself, and not have anybody on the other side, that's a nervous breakdown. That's not that's not you like being edgy or being creative. That's you going insane. Because it's fucking crazy to like just sit there and believe that you can just talk for 4 hours, especially if you don't have anybody on the viewing end of your podcast. Because sometimes, look, I will say this. The reason why I put the videos on YouTube is because I don't always get an audience when I'm live streaming this originally. Sometimes the audience doesn't come till later. And like, if you don't have anyone to, as I said, if you don't have anyone to bounce off of, you slowly but surely just you run out of stuff to talk about because, as I say, I look at actors and people like that who read from a script. That to me, in some ways, like if you can memorize shit, that is very fucking easy to do. But to sit here and like get behind a microphone, just have a topic in your head and just spout off, it's a lot. And it's why you end up at some point eventually just rambling on and blah, 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 blah. Sometimes, and that becomes a podcast. But I also, going back to why I wanted to change this podcast, it's not only that, I want to learn about people. Because why I started this podcast, one of the main reasons was because as a performer, I felt very misunderstood in what I was writing. And I figured if people aren't going to get me in the way that I'm expressing myself in art, I'm going to have to do a podcast to like dumb it down for the masses. Because some people are too fucking stupid to listen to the lyrics of a song that I'm writing and they're just focusing in on what the title is. And it's like, that's like the title of a book. And the saying is never judge a book by its cover. It's like, read the fucking lyrics. Like, I know we live in an age where everything's supposed to be dumbed down for the idiots of the world to just hear things and just understand everything because everything is supposed to be simplistic. But at some point, I like having intellectual conversations. I like having intellectual podcasts. I like that's why I listen to podcasts. I listen to podcasts in addition to like recording one because I want to hear other people's views on different topics. And it causes your brain to work. That's why I will never stop watching the news and I will never stop like listening to podcasts because if you eventually just like let your brain fill with nothing but sort of mindless reality show entertainment, which I'm going to say this, I love reality shows. RuPaul's Drag Race is my favorite show of all time. So I love reality shows. But you can't just watch nothing but reality shows. You got to watch some intellectual stuff at some point. Because eventually, if that's all you let your brain go into, you're eventually going to dumb yourself down and you're going to make it easier for you to get Alzheimer's and dementia. Because your brain's going to become... It's going to become mush. And that's why I literally do. I watch the news 5 days a week. Because if all you do is like sit there and scroll through Twitter, I mean, granted, guilty. I'm not going to say that I'm like immune to all of this stuff where like, oh, Twitter, I would never. Instagram, I would never just sit there and look at people's photos, look at people's beautifulness. Yeah, beautifulness is a word, I think. Beauty. Here you go. Beauty's a word. Look at people's beauty and just like be in that sort of prism and just sit there and like let that be your entertainment. Because a lot of people just feel that I don't want to go too political on this because this isn't a political show. This is supposed to be my fun show. But if you don't know things about what's going on around you, that's what leads to stuff like World War II and indoctrination. It's the fact that a lot of people say ignorance is bliss, but ignorance is not going to help you. Well, all it's going to do is make you uninformed and sort of will allow history to repeat itself. And I don't want history to repeat itself. I want to grow. I believe in progress. It's something that I feel is very, very good in this society. Is to constantly have progression and not be stuck in the time that we're in or to go backwards and regress. Because regression is probably the one thing that I'm scared about by not knowing what's going on in the world. Because that's honestly what can happen if you don't know what's going on. But again, with that being said, a little bit of reality TV isn't bad. Like a little bit of tabloidness in your life isn't bad for you. It's not going to hurt you. But if that's all you consume, you're going to be in trouble. And that's why I said I felt like as I started doing Gay Out the City, I had visions in my brain of what the podcast was originally going to be. And then eventually, as I started recording, things changed. It's growth. There always has to be growth in what you do. And through that growth, you hear other people's stories and you let them speak on what they believe about certain things. And granted, I'm not afraid to be controversial. I'm not afraid to say something that might get me demonetized on YouTube. I don't fucking care. Because my thing is, I never set out to like start doing a podcast because I wanted money. I mean, money's great. I would love money. I would love to get paid to do this and never have to have another full-time job other than this podcast and doing the opinionated bitch. I would love that. That would be my goal. But right now, while I'm not making money, this is the time to ask the controversial questions because, especially when interviewing people, I'm not going to say that, like, I'm going to try for, like, a Barbara Walters-esque interview where I'm trying to make people cry. That's not my goal. My goal is to ask them about how their life is. And from that, kind of just learn about what made them go into music, go into OnlyFans, go into porn, go into go-go dancing, whatever topics I'm able to get with those people, it'll teach me about what made them want to start and how people treat them. Because in a lot of ways, I will not be afraid to say on a podcast if I feel people get mistreated in a certain industry. I'm going to say it because I will say in truth, with gay people, probably the people that get most disrespected, there are three groups that probably get most disrespected when performing at gay establishments. One of them are drag queens. One of them are go-go. The other one is go-go dancers, and the other one is bartenders. Because some people don't have the common sense, I would say. Well, not even common sense, the decency to think that just because someone is either half naked behind a bar, half naked performing, that they have a right to like touch wherever the fuck that they want. Or in the case of drag queens, which has happened to me before, some asshole thought at one point they had the fucking right to grab my hair and pull it off my head. No, bitch. Keep your hands where they belong. Don't be fucking touching people in ways that they don't want you to touch them because it's rude. They are providing entertainment for you. And for you to just feel that they should be able to do that you should be able to do whatever the fuck you want to them? No. Fuck you. You don't have a right to like yes, even with like for example go-go dancers, you have a certain right to be able to touch them, but in some ways there's certain things that you believe that you can touch that you can't. And at some point, to all the people who think that they can just do whatever you want, eventually, if you do something to a drag queen, you mess with the wrong drag queen, they're literally going to take off their shoe and beat you over the fucking head with it. And take a stiletto and like stab it in your eye. And if they do that, I'm not a person who's like pro violence, but you fucking deserved it. You touched somebody in a way that you're not supposed to. Well, I got into that. Wasn't as how I saw this podcast going. Anyway, so basically to wrap this up, I will say I am looking forward to this new chapter of Gay Out the City. And as I said before, will I necessarily be able to do this podcast every week? I don't know. It all depends. And if anyone viewing this is following me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, whatever, and they want to see me interview certain people, DM me. I'll try and get in touch with them and see what I can do. I mean, don't DM me ridiculous suggestions like Lady Gaga because I don't have that kind of power. Like I'm sitting down here trying to like reach up for people, being like, "I'm a fan of your work. Would you do my podcast sometime?" That's honestly what I have to do. It's like I'm clawing my way up with me being down with like the common people because I would love to have that like inflated sense of ego where it's like I'm a celebrity, no one can touch me. I love that, but bitch, I ain't there yet. I'm gonna try. Again, there's plenty of people that I would love to interview, and there's people that I've reached out to, but all you have to do is like a hit and a miss. You strike, you get ready to pitch the ball, and you hope that the bat hits it and knocks it out of the field. You can get the fucking interview. Wow. Look at my gay ass in here making a sports reference. Um, and I'm going to love it. Because there's some people whose like work I've always admired from afar. And now I will hopefully get to do the research to sort of get to know them and develop a connection. Because that's honestly what I'm hoping to do starting next week. Is just develop connections with people for them to answer me. Anyway, I'm going to bring this podcast to a close. This has been Gay Out the City. I'm your host, Prince Electro Diamond, and I hope you've enjoyed.